clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Davis.
Present.
Councilmember Kern.
Present.
Councilmember Hagenow.
Present.
Councilmember Parham.
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Present.
Councilmember Dismet.
Present.
Mayor Ryan.
Here,
There are 7 members present.
thank you very much. So, this afternoon, we're fortunate to have the chief of police of the town of Dillon here to talk to us. And I think Officer Robert
Johnson.
Johnson. Officer Johnson is with him. So again, I'll turn it over to the town manager to do further introduction.
Okay, as you know, we've been having discussions with the town of Dillon on forming a joint police department. Discussions have been going really well. We'll be bringing that back to you in January. But I wanted to give this opportunity. I've gotten to know Chief Osborne quite well over the last couple of months. And I wanted to give the board this opportunity to meet with Chief and hear a little about what he thinks of a joint police force. So if you can have you guys come up here.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Gail Osborne, I'm the chief in Dillon right now. Like John said, we've got to know each other a little bit over the last couple of weeks. Got to meet the mayor quite some time ago. And just fascinating to watch you stand up your own town. And clearly, you guys are very efficient and have gotten a lot of work done. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Sergeant Johnson is with me today. You'll be seeing a shining face in and out. We have one other sergeant in the city. His name's Zach. So, a little bit about me. I grew up in the Midwest. Kind of transplanted to the mountains the week after I left college, and then never left. I really thought that I'd be come up for a couple years and kind of figure out what I was doing, and fortunately enough, I landed. In the first part of my law enforcement career, I spent 17 years at the sheriff's office. Was fortunate enough to come over to Dillon as a patrol officer. Through succession planning, I ended up being the chief. Wouldn't trade any of my adventures in for anything. It's been almost 20, well, it's over 25 years that I've actually been in some county, so not nearly as many as some, but enough to know. Raising our family here, my wife and I and our 2 sons live in Breckenridge. They're mountain kids, like to do mountain things, so they're super busy, but thanks for allowing us to be here today. A little bit about our department. We're a fairly small department, fairly similar town population-wise to what Keystone is. So we're a little over 1,000 people. Our office is comprised of myself, one administrative assistant, 2 sergeants, 2 working detectives, and my working detectives carry a caseload, but they also supplement patrol services on the road, and 9 full-time officers after that. So, as I've noted, it's budget season, so you'll see our narratives come up a bit. We're growing, just like the town of Keystone is. I see incredible potential with the town of Keystone and the town of Dillon. One of the reasons why I wanted to go to Dillon when I got the opportunity is there's incredible potential there. Just great community, unique attractions, with the lake and the amphitheater. And that's no different with the town of Keystone. Keystone is can be more than pure ski towns. And it's so unique because it's in it. So, quite a while ago, when I spoke with the mayor, and, trying to figure out kind of what your town looks like, and interesting things that I look at, is public safety. What does public safety mean? I want to ask each of you that question and you'll get my information and I'd love to hear some of what you think public safety is. In a short time that these discussions have been going on, I hear that we have a lot of similar issues. We have a lot of similar visions and goals, especially with highway kids, truck, vehicle traffic, speeds, pedestrians, but that's only part of the public safety package, at least the way that we look at it. Community involvement, approachable officers. We've been very successful, since even before I got there with our former chief. He really put that department on the correct pathway. Our staff has been very stable. COVID. Right now, we're actually full staff. We haven't majority of time since I've been there. We are sending, we hired our last employee that's going to police academy in January. And he has started Keystone as well. So we really try and focus on, happy people that want to be in the office and they understand and what it takes to actually, you gotta want to be here. Obviously the cost of living here is exceptional. It's a much different type of policing. If you're in the metro and you get the chance to hire mountain cops, people love that because they can do everything. So like I said, we've been fairly successful with how we target, how we hire. And I was focused on, happy cops are happy cops. Right? Granted, everything in our org is not rated against uniforms. However, you may not know that because if you have conversations with our cops, they're polite, they're professional, they're what we expect. One of the things, kind of the three pinnacles of coming in, new officers, go through training and what that looks like. We have certain things that we expect. The majority of our officers that have 2 years and under go to basic SWAT school. They go to TCCC, which is combat casualty care. And people always kind of wonder, why would you do that? Our training program, we're developing cops. They can think, they can make decisions, they're professional. And overall, we're not trying to hire the cops that are going to stick around for 2 or 3 years. We have numerous people that have been on staff for a while, trying to buy houses, raise families, enjoy the outdoors. So I think that, a lot of those traits are really appealing when we talk about the joint police department, as opposed to a contractual, just a contract coverage type of situation, which, which you guys utilize when the thing, especially with public safety, if it's done the right way, it is not cheap, but you get what you pay. So the one thing that I would say early on is, as a group, the contract world provides service. What you guys want to see as far as service and what you want your community to look like, those are really big discussions, which I know have already been had as people, but, really what kind of involvement do you want in your community? Like I said, I think that there is some bigger vision and value in looking at what a joint police department does. And you're getting all the other stuff that may not necessarily come with it. If you're looking for contract work and coverage, we're not going to do it. The other pieces that come with that, prioritization in the call load, what that looks like is for staffing, things that we can truly do to address, the problems and issues that are in, from block to block, base areas, within our town. A very community-oriented police department. Looking at the bigger vision of that. The interesting thing is timing of that, of trying to work and come up with an IGA that is obtainable through the attorneys, obviously is no small feat by any means. However, I think, through our last meeting, I think that there's some progress that's being made. So I do think that there is a realistic approach to getting an IGA that is can be put in front of you for you to make some decisions. The kind of looking out and looking at some terms like 3-year, 5-year, looking into what it really looks like and building out what really could be a sustainable department in the future. It's not going to be like that day one, I'll guarantee you. However, we can absorb, the call load and what that looks like, but making steps to truly build it in, starting year one, what does it look like at the end of year? What does it look like from 3 to 6? One of the biggest interesting projects that would need to happen as we continue to grow with the communities, both sides, is space. And the facility piece would be a big part of that. So there's pretty good vision in the future, depending on what your appetite as far as council and your community really desires. I've had the pleasure of talking with many people in your community and adjoining neighbors, and it's been interesting to hear kind of different people's perspective, past law enforcement experiences, response issues. I think doing it correctly in the right way, I think that, we can address a lot of those issues together. And that's why I think having the vision of a joint police department as opposed to contract work is definitely worth the discussion. So real quickly about that, I would entertain any questions. Obviously, I'm just new, kind of getting thrown up on you, kind of put a face to the name. I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to fix this. Does anybody have any questions or any comments? I know some of you, I don't know all of you. I can't wait to meet the rest of everybody else.
Any questions? Councilmember Kerr.
Sure, it would be helpful to us. And thank you for coming and everything you've said so far. But I wonder if you could share with us your sense of some of the challenges that are unique to either small towns or mountain towns.
Ooh, mountain towns.
Your choice.
Towns specifically, one of the questions that I get a lot is when people do staff modeling and what that looks like and how many people. So for instance, Dillon has a little over 1,000 residents. And an archaic way of looking at that is, so many officers speech per resident. But we all know on any given weekend, any night, those numbers aren't realistic. So you're going to need an incredible amount more officers as opposed to what some of the national modeling, just based on maybe your event schedule, your situation is supposed to be in a ski area. Those numbers are drastically different. So I think that is a big challenge. Obviously, housing is always going to be an issue. That's at the top of everybody's list. Everybody talks about it. We've taken steps in our department. We have down payment assistance. We have had 4 officers either build housing, get into the deep restricted market, kind of more of the long-term approach to that. And that program has actually been quite successful with our department. Trying to keep people locally, and when I mean locally, that footprint has gotten bigger. It used to be, locally Summit County. Locally now is adjoining counties. And we do have one officer that lives in Lakewood, and some days he beats me when I live in Breckenridge. So those are 2 issues. Just the cost of doing business is obviously skyrocketing in a lot of things, but public safety for sure. Keeping pace with salaries, insurance benefits, what that package looks like, and staying competitive with our surrounding partners is going to be a challenge into the future. It's challenging now, but looking at the future, if someone could maybe enlighten me on what the cost of everything was going to do, that'd be great. But obviously our operation costs have increased pretty drastically in the last couple of years. They will continue to grow. And obviously with fixed revenue, in your case, new revenue that, and development and changing the revenue stream, what that looks like can have an effect on what you can afford and what you need to be doing. I see that as an issue. I mean, Morrison might be a good example of that recently, right? Smaller town, a little smaller than our department, but half the population and funding issues. It's a very realistic discussion of what public safety costs. It's a lot. But, critical incidents and why I asked the question beginning of, what does public safety mean to you? There's a lot of things specifically in Keystone that are a little more complex, right? It's just not your basic running traffic. Everything from the public safety world of, there's wildfire issues here, there's hazmat, there's all kinds of things that go into that, that comes with that package piece. So, those are just some of the challenges that I see. Seems like every day there's new challenges, but I'd like to think that our department, especially with the support of our community, we've met a lot of those challenges. We're always trying to think outside the box, think critically of how we can improve it, how we can make it better for our staff. And we're very cognizant of what we can do to make sure we invest a lot in our officers. So we want to make sure that they're effective, they're trustworthy, and we can keep them.
Question, what's probably the biggest worry you have about doing a deal with Keystone?
The biggest worry? Obviously, any kind of joint venture like this is communication. I do think, and why Sergeant Johnson is here is just the mere fact of making sure that we can get the right face time. So tonight I'll be leaving here and going to another meeting because our meetings are the same. And making sure that we can communicate in a way that everybody's feeling that their needs are getting met. Granted, I'm only one person, but I have a great staff. So we are strategizing to make sure that everybody is getting what they need and that we're efficient, because I think that that's incredibly important. And I'll be honest with you, like our upper executive staff, we are very thin on purpose. We don't have assistants, we don't have an assistant chief, which in the future, depending on what happens with the growth, there's no question about it that there's going to be growth in these two things. And we need to grow with the population involved. So there's going to be some growth and honestly, timing, I think, is a big part of that. Can we do it right? Because we have to do it right in the first place, and taking the time to make sure that it meets the needs of both ends.
Sure.
Thank you for coming. This has been really helpful to hear this through your brain. We aren't alike. I thought it was a natural match when we started, but you just identified some interesting distinctions. And so far we've asked you about challenges and we've asked you about concerns. Let me ask you what opportunities you see in working with us.
Well, opportunities. Wow. I think the sky's the limit there. Just out the gate, of the basic vision and the budgeting that's happened going into 2025 is going to lay the groundwork for the next 3 to 5 for sure. Some of the stuff and the priorities that we have laid out, we think will make our department suitable for both communities, that we can absorb, the call loads and what it really looks like. And from an administrative standpoint, we'll be able to do that. I will say there's certain things that need to happen in that really 3 to 5 year, and a lot of that is space. We are spatially challenged, at least in the facility that we're in right now. I think if it's done correctly of that, there's potential for growth in our department, which is a fantastic opportunity for our officers. that would be an inclusion of a third sergeant. Honestly, one of the positions that we will have first is actually the one I'm probably the most excited about, which is an IT support person. So one thing that our department has really focused in on since I've been there and before is using technology to our advantage. And then obviously the state stepped in that, and body cam's a good example of that, but we had body cams almost a decade before they were mandatory. But some of the technology that we have that we want to utilize in the future, having someone within the organization that can deal with all of the issues. Like, I'm sure everybody's computer works all the time. There's no IT issues or hiccups. We think that even that one person actually will make it a lot more efficient, a lot more streamlined. And I look at it from the chief perspective, what can we do for our officers to make it better? Especially in the middle of the night on the middle of Highway 6. So, those are just a couple that from an employee perspective, there's opportunity. We have housing that's coming up on County Road 51. There's housing available in Keystone. That's why we really try and focus on people that want to truly be in the office. There is no lack of possibilities. If people like to be outside or however they like to recreate, it's an ideal situation. So there's a lot of positives to this partnership, even more than just the geographical portion of it. Clearly Wilcas Ski Resort doesn't hurt that, but there's so many other opportunities. It's just very unique.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you, Chief Osborne, for being here today, and Sergeant Johnson as well. It's not a question, it's more common. A couple of times you had mentioned asking what is public safety to us? And I think that we will have plenty of conversations moving forward about this, but just getting out early for me, and I don't want to speak for other members of the community, but public safety is a presence, a positive presence at events, at community functions, but it's not a funding source. So for me, I don't want our budget to be reliant on public safety income. And I think that other people would agree with that here, but just generally speaking, it's community focused, which you hit on a couple of times. So that's awesome to hear, but it's not a funding source for us. So that's kind of my perspective on that.
Great.
And thank you again for being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. I love your perspective. It's, the mayor and the town manager and I've talked numerous times that I appreciate the fact that you wouldn't base any of your budgeting on revenue from anything, of course. But I'm not kidding. It is expensive. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. It is an expensive endeavor. Because I will tell you, even when you're looking at the future, and you guys will get a look into that, like the second year, potentially looking in, building on an organization, right? So there's two things that I'm going to ask for the subsequent second year, two of which would be two community service officers, because I think between the two towns and the business footprint, valuable positions, whether it be code enforcement, just the sheer amount of businesses in both towns, very valuable. That, from an officer perspective, we can work into the future of what that looks like of adding officers until, to your point, in the staffing model, we can add officers until people are comfortable and we're achieving the presence that is necessary that your citizens would like. Yeah, that's great. Our cops are here. It is no secret the summertime, the event schedule on both is extravagant. But that's part of it. That's the amphitheater and how we staff the amphitheater, that is probably our greatest opportunity to, be with our community. It's not uncommon. I rarely get tasked in the amphitheater because I make it about 25 feet and I get to talk to somebody that one of our citizens is there. So that's just one of those unique things that we look forward to, of that being in the community, FaceTime of that. And that's a big lift in the beginning, you know, and it's not gonna be overnight where you're gonna be like, man, we haven't seen a car out here for a while. You know, but it's gonna take time to grow into that. So I really appreciate your comment on that. That's why I brought that up. You know, kind of the public safety perspective. You know, some of the people that I've talked to have much different perspectives of, you know, when they call 911, what does that look like? If I have a private property accident, why doesn't anybody come? You know, that's all stuff, and I'll ask questions. In fact, you'll probably kick me out here because, you know, we want to know about that because problems in the community are over. And if we can do things to fix that, or change it, or try and get the behavior change, you know, Highway 6 is a good example of that. People drive really fast. I think we have a very common interest in the Highway 6 code. I've been very vocal since I became chief. We've had numerous fatalities, like whatever we can do to decrease the speeds and make it safer. You know, you guys even have more complex problems other than, you know, when you come by Corinthian Hills, that's one issue. Racer Drive is a whole thing, right? I know this, and I'll share something with you that the mayor and John Cronin was my first tour when I started at the sheriff's office. I was actually the Keystone car for 2 feet. It's what they used to call the snake. So there used to be an assigned car here, which was amazing. There's never a lack of anything to do in your community because it's vibrant community. There's lots of things going on, and it's going to continue to get busier in different ways. I mean, the traffic patterns and what you're seeing. So clearly, even if we can come to an agreement in the IJ, we're going to be great neighbors, and we're still going to tackle a lot of those issues. You know, anybody else have any comments, questions?
I've got a couple. Community police. You've touched on it a little bit. You know, in the winter we have, particularly springtime, probably in a couple of weeks, we'll probably have 25,000 people in this community on the speed weekend. But the staffing that you have, what kind of a presence do you think you can provide? As you talked about the importance of people being, your officers being visible in the community and supporting. What kind of a presence do you think you'd be able to provide?
Day one or after year one? Oh, okay. Day one, you're gonna probably see what you see now. You see our cars out here a lot. We are very, well, we are here a lot. And the reason that we're here a lot is depending on where other cars are being the sheriff's office, right? So what happens is if they get dispatched as a primary call because they're responsible, we get dispatched as a second because we're the closest, because they're somewhere else. So right now you're seeing 1, 2, 3 cars. We dump resources in the Keystone lot. So in the beginning, you're going to see a lot of response motivated presence. As we actually start to make moves, the organization changes a little bit. You know, we will strategically look at how do we get more presence in certain areas. And, you know, obviously the base areas are a big piece of that. You know, the summertime, you know, it kind of changes. You know, the base areas may not be as busy on certain days, but your golf courses are, you know, in the wintertime, you know, there's a lot going on everywhere. You know, including your medical center and other places. So we really look at, you know, how do we get that presence? And presence can mean a lot of different things. Is it through technology, is it through cars? Is it walking? You know, walking through, you know, going into the businesses, start building relationships with the people that are here. You know, kind of an interesting story is one of our officers was in a restaurant in your town, in plain clothes, and he's like, "Hey, I know you." And ironically, our officer was on a call in the middle of River Run a couple weeks ago. You know, so it's going to take a little time to build those relationships. But as it grows, especially, and that's why I asked beginning or end of year one. You know, really trying to work towards staffing that really kind of hits the sweet spot, where it's not, you know, so many officers, they have nothing to do, because I never would see that happening, but having enough to make sure that we're effective to meet those. Clearly meeting the emergency, you know, everything gets prioritized. You know, if there's traffic accident on Highway 6 or so that, you know, you're not going to see a lot of our people in the base area during time, you know, with other events, you know, because other stuff is going on. But, you know, clearly that becomes a priority too. You know, how do we address that? Not why I said growing into the future, like finding the sweet spot of, you know, how many people is that going to be? And the interesting thing is we might think that we have it, and, you know, you have a development project or the numbers change, you know, it's going to be a moving target. So.
Well, one of the big issues we have right now, aside from the normal call load and festivals and that, is speeding issues on Highway 6. You know, while fines are not going to be a funding source, and we don't look at them as a funding source in this community, we have a major problem with speeding in town. I think the town managers probably shared the story of the CDOT cams that were up in the 100 miles an hour at this regular drive intersection issues that happened. And one of the, so I think it's going to be important as quickly as possible to have a visible police presence on 6. Because that's how people are going to recognize they need to slow down. Without that, you know, if you sit over in Steep and look out at Highway 6, summer or winter, and you see the hazmat returning to Denver, and what you're seeing is increasing speed, probably 55, 65 miles an hour, going through the range of drive area, going through that end. Don't want to get speed. You go up the other one, coming down, you have the opposite problem. They get into the flat area and suddenly say, release to go. You know, we have a sound problem with compression brakes that needs to be addressed just because of our location coming off of Southly. And so, at least from my perspective, as soon as we get an agreement, it's going to be important to have a visibility. And yes, that's probably going to mean tickets are going to be written. And I know when that happens, initially we'll probably have some pushback from our community because I'm sure that it's not just. Yeah, and that's one guarantee is because somebody else has said it. But that's. I'm concerned that in one of our promises that we made to the community when we incorporated it, we're going to take action, slow down that traffic.
Yeah, and I think it's even more than that. I think obviously going for the behavior change through presence, and I'll be honest, at the beginning of that, it's not going to look a lot different than it is now. You're going to see cars out there, but it's not going to be at the level that I think the behavior is going to change. Some of the other things that have already been talked about, you know, collectively as a group, and this will be kind of how your council would like to approach it. You know, whether it be traffic calming, what CDOT is willing to allow and not allow, because when you look at the corridor of that, one of the things that I would really like to try and get accomplished, and I think together as a group, lowering the speed limit from almost the 205. I can't speak for some of them, but as you enter Dillon, to the bottom of Loveland Pass, make it consistent. You know, obviously there is development and change, whether it be roundabouts or some of the other things that CDOT identified in their open house. There's some opportunity there, whether it be traffic calming, signage. Honestly, on days like today, we have to ask Region 3, like how we could get variable speed signs when the weather goes forward. And my issue is CDOT may not have the staffing to plow it immediately, right? For us, it's just an integral route that we have to have, but they are so busy doing other things. Trying to get the speed slow down that way. And honestly, one of the bigger discussions throughout the state right now is obviously radar enforcement. And photo radar enforcement. Actually, our town attorney lives in a place that has it, and he was a little, well, he started talking to me, he goes, yeah, you're just gonna get labeled in a really negative way, because you're gonna write 10,000 tickets for 3 over. And I'm like, 3 over? Like, I was thinking of 12 to 20. And people laugh at that, but the high speeds and stuff that we're seeing in our officers are writing, they're significant. I spoke with our municipal judge this morning. He requires to see people that are speeding egregiously. So they have mandatory appearance. I get the thing with your community, especially the enforcement piece. And the greatest thing is, you follow the law. I will say usually how that happens when you have a discussion like that, especially at council, it's usually one of the council members that runs the stops. Is speeding. And I get it. There's high speeds for a reason. The thing that is kind of unique about Highway 6 is when you look how it's designed and the speeds that it can take. CDOT's impression is that speed limit should go up. And that, people that live here and experience the traffic patterns, like, that's not acceptable. Not in any way, shape, or form. And I think, bringing the speed limits down, the roundabouts, even an additional crosswalk, even before it's still been done, but they're really looking at how you can get the behavior change and whether, it's hard to get CDOT to do any kind of traffic calming. When there's no funding, it's not in the plan. And to your point, like, none of this is driven, like, we could go write 1 million tickets and it's still not going to change the behavior. We need to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, thank you for coming, Gail, and always good to see you. We've known each other for decades through Search and Rescue. And I agree that the changing behavior is the real problem. And that's where I think you mentioned the radar enforcement encampment. That is the tool, because intermittent enforcement doesn't drive behavior change across the diverse populations that pass through here. We have the people who live in town, we have the people who live in the county, and we have the people who are passing through on the regular and on the occasion. But the way that Colorado has set those up, I think, is fairly smart. They're not a surprise. You literally put out signs that say, there's a speed camera coming up. And that's it. The bigger the sign, the better the sign. I love it. Because the point isn't to write the tickets, the point is to make them drive the speed limit. And that's where the safety comes, and that's where the noise thing comes, because we talk about compression brakes, but I'll tell you, when the semis are coming through doing 75 miles per hour, they make an incredible amount of noise that is many multiples greater than if they were doing the. And on that note, we can talk about like getting the people who are driving 10, 20, 30, 40 miles over the speed limit down to the speed limit. That's to really address safety. I don't think that I would support lowering the speed limit between Keystone and Dillon, because then we're talking about adding a lot of transport time and reducing highway capacity. I just want to go on record of saying that. Councilmember Davis.
You've mentioned traffic calming several times. Could you give us some examples of what you mean by traffic calming?
Sure. So traffic calming, whether it be by design, barriers, when I mean design, like changing, putting purposeful curves and roads. You have some natural ones already with medians. Sometimes people narrow stuff, which I highly would suspect CDOT will not allow that. But things like that where, trying to get people to slow down, whether it be just in their mind of, I can't go to that curve that fast, or some of the stuff that I know that's happened in Dillon is narrowing some of the roadways and how the medians work. You know, you have a very unique problem with going from highway to speed to a crosswalk. You know, what does that look like coming into that? You know, that, the traffic engineers are quite magical at doing things like that. Like, I don't claim to be an expert in any of that. But clearly there's gotta be something that we can do. And I think it's collectively as a group between both teams, because it doesn't seem like we necessarily get hurt a lot. We presented some very low hanging fruit, which CDOT, you know, actually restripes things, and that's great, but we're talking about acceleration, deceleration lanes, so to decrease the injury accidents, they retime some of the lights, which I know a lot of people were unhappy with the retiming of the lights, especially going going down towards the 205. Our injury crashes decreased fairly drastically. Because at one point we were going to injury accidents at 3 of those intersections, pretty regularly. So actually some of that did actually help. So I think it's going to be probably one of the most important things that we do looking into the future. I think that the long-term effects of that will be really impactful, because there's been a lot of injury accidents, there's been fatalities. You know, the thing that I would say, you know, to the council members' comment, you know, even if the speed stay consistent, you know, you still have consistent speeders that are 20-40 over. And I say 20-40 because I'm very confident with the high scores right now. It's ridiculous. But I would say cars are, you know, they're really great these days. They're super fast, they stop. Even with your four-wheel drive, it doesn't matter because it's icy. So it's not going to stop the way you think it is. But, you know, the other part of that is the truck traffic. And I know a couple of you brought up the same things. That's getting looked at throughout, especially this corridor, and some changes have gotten made. And, you know, what does that look like to the residents of Keystone? You know, we have the same issues, the noise issues, especially about the people in Dillon Bridge are frustrated, you know, because they hear trucks that they think are using their air brakes or however they're classified these days, but sometimes the trucks are loud because they have straight stacks and pipes like that. So that's a very unique challenge. The traffic cameras, and there's other tech that goes into that from a police department perspective, you know, how do we multiply our force, right? So speed trailers could be in the way, you know, but clearly there's going to be an effect and a consequence in the community of why is that? Is it a speed trap? Is it funding your new police department? You know, clearly, I don't think that's anyone's intention that's sitting in here. That could be me being very speculative, but the other part would be the interesting thing with the valley and the way that this community is set up, right? We have license plate readers in our car now, but we have talked about doing stationary LVRs. From a crime fighting perspective, there's natural choke points in both of these valleys, right? So a project like that is very beneficial in our work, right? Because we have the ability, and it's not tracking people's license plates. It's not, you know, figuring out. We use it as a crime fighting perspective, because if somebody steals your bike off your deck, and we know what time that's at, we have somewhere to start. You know, and the thing that I would say about our department is we pride ourselves. If we can investigate something and bring that to a closure, we will do that. And it doesn't matter how small or how big it is. Like, we are in a position and we have enough skill and experience that we really take pride in taking those cases as far as we can go. So I bring that up, and that's not from an enforcement standpoint. That's more of a, you know, dealing with issues and traffic issues, and, you know, something like a hit and run perhaps in Highway 6, which actually happened not very far from here. You know, where we can hold people accountable because we can search and have data available. You know, it depends on what your perspective is. You know, there's some councils, some boards here that stated like, absolutely not, like that's too big brother. To us, that's first multiplier because we might not have somebody available that's on the highway watching. You know, to us, using technology to our advantage for the betterment, we try and do that as much as possible. But that will be one of the biggest challenges in the next couple of years is trying to figure out strategies. Clearly, it's not based on we're going to go write 30 tickets because we need $200. Like that's ridiculous. It's just it's an interesting perspective that is obviously flawed. But really trying to look at is it cost. So long-winded answer to a big problem.
Understand. Well, we appreciate you being here today. We'll let you get off to your other stuff for your supporting. One last comment though, we do have some traffic coming with the design next year and implementation in 26. Partnering with CDOT, it involves actually narrowing the lane. At Razor Drive.
Outstanding.
It includes new signage, different lighting, larger medians, all around Razor Drive. So our town manager has had some success in working with CDOT. With that, again, thank you very much for coming.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
Yep. Yeah.
Next item on the agenda is the exception of fine and administrative citation orders, and I'll turn it over to the town manager.
And more will pass this on to our town attorney.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. So this discussion item is directly tied to some of the things that we've just been discussing with Chief Osborne related to enforcement of ordinances within the municipality. There's a background information in the packet and then a draft ordinance. And really what this draft ordinance does is it provides a basic structure for enforcing town codes that you've adopted so far. That basic structure is through the municipal court process, and then also a separate process, which would be an administrative citation process. And the administrative citation process is outside the municipal court. That would be handled really by town staff and not by law enforcement. So just quick overview of what's in the ordinances before you. First, I want to mention that all of this is guided by the town charter and section 8.1 of the town charter related to the municipal court. In the town charter, you have a section that says you have a municipal court that's been established, that your court will be presided over by a judge, a municipal court judge. That judge has to be a lawyer. And that then the third process or piece of that charter section is that the enforcement will be by fine or imprisonment. So quickly an overview, the section 2 of the draft ordinance specifies what your maximum penalty is, and that's $2,650. And that for criminal type violations, which you have not yet adopted any criminal violations, but that would be a jail time of 364 days. That's the maximum penalty. Section 3 then talks about the municipal judge and how that person is appointed, and then how that person can be removed. One of the things that I think you are all probably aware of is that this is really your opportunity in your code to have any impact on the judge. You would be hiring your judge, and then you could only remove your judge for certain reasons. And that's because you have, your judge, you need to have some separation from what your judge does. You can't be involved in individual court matters, and you can't really be second guessing the judge. And so the reasons that you can get rid of the judge are for cause reasons that are really very significant. And those are spelled out in the ordinance. The Section 4 has a different process, like I mentioned. It's for administrative citation process. Again, conducted outside of the courts. The ordinance dictates the form of the administrative citation. It would need to identify the violation, and it would require payment of the penalty for that violation. The payment is required even if the person later remedies the violation. And failure to pay the penalty results in a late fee, and it may be referred to collection. The difference about the administrative citation penalty is due, and there's no adjudication. The person can request a hearing, but they have to go through the process of requesting a hearing. It's just like very similar to tickets. The last section of the draft ordinance proposes an amendment to the recently adopted model traffic code ordinance. And really what that amendment is, well, let me step back. The ordinance specifies that the town council is to establish a unique fine schedule for traffic violation. So in other words, town council would decide, okay, 1 point violation is $100 fine, 2 point violation or traffic ticket is $150, and so on. Well, in researching the fine schedule, looking more closely into what Dylan does, I discovered that that's not what Dylan follows the state process and the state fine schedule related to traffic tickets. So they don't have a unique fine schedule. So a suggestion and something for you all to consider is consistency with what Dylan does and just following the state fine schedule. The benefits of that is, again, consistency. The Dylan police officers use a Brazos system, which is their handheld electronic system for issuing tickets. It would be relatively easy to issue tickets. And then also it would be the same consistency with the judge. The pro of establishing your own fine schedule is that you would have control in each town. Decide, what do we want to say is a fine for a 15-mile-an-hour speeding violation. So that's an overview of the ordinance. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions? John?
Thank you. So I know I had shared previously my opinion on the income-based fine restrictions, and how fines in our community can have disproportional effects. Community members, depending on your income and all that. Is there a specific section in here that you, point to that might, allow for town or judicial staff to have a discretionary aspect to that where, let's say we have, and this is just a polarizing example, but we have a homeless person doesn't have a dollar to their name and they get charged $150 for a fine versus a millionaire who has a mansion on the side of the hill. And $150 can mean a lot to a lot of different things to those two classes of folks. Is there a way to have discretion in some of these fines that is spelled out in a section that I may not have seen?
Well, the municipal court process, that piece of it really isn't spelled out in this ordinance in terms of how a citation would be handled if it's issued to the court. But a municipal court ticket, a judge is always going to have discretion in the fine that is set. And even before the case gets to the judge, the prosecutor would have the ability to have discretion in entering pleas with the person related to the charge. So those are available, and those are, I don't even think those are spelled out in, I mean, it might be spelled out in the municipal court rules, which will govern all of the municipal court cases.
Is there, so if we were to go into a joint agreement, right, there would be a certain level of restriction that we would be able to differ from the way that Dylan is doing things now in the municipal court, right? So if I'm understanding this correctly, we could give some perspective on our desires. I don't want to speak for everyone. This is just my perspective right now, to have the more equitable mannerism for fines, but then that would have to be spelled out in a process that is potentially different than other parties to the court process.
I think that first, you would all want to make sure that you are on the same page related to handling the court cases. Might want to have both once Keystone works on getting an agreement with the municipal court with Dylan and Silverthorne, you might want to have the prosecutor come in and talk to you. And also have, I mean, you would need to come in and talk to you because a judge would be contracted with Keystone. And so then you can share in those discussions with these folks in terms of what you would like to see your citations that are being. Is compliance the most important thing for you? Is it maybe recognition of individual circumstances that you would like the prosecutor or the judge to consider, or do you want the person to be uniform in all cases?
That's very insightful. Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah. Well, just from a logistics perspective, so we would need, if we pass, we need to have a code enforcement officer, right?
You would, yes, you need to have somebody assigned really to that role.
And we need to negotiate, well, hire a judge and then negotiate with the courts. And so how does this actually, so we say yes today to this. We go through a couple months of hiring people, or how does it? Just let
You know, I understand, and maybe the town manager can speak to this, but I understand that likely you will be entering into an agreement with a municipal court that handles Dylan and Silverthorne matters. So Keystone will be an additional municipality that will have its court cases heard on the same day as Dylan and Silverthorne. I understand it's the same judge for Dylan and Silverthorne. So, yeah, you could decide to hire that same person, I mean, it's, you know, would be,
No, I understand the steps. I'm just thinking about the time. Let's say, yes, it's today,
yeah,
but we really can't execute on this stuff until we
yes,
have those other agreements
Right.
and hire.
yes,
So, and there is someone maybe breaking the law or code, but we're not enforcement.
correct.
Okay. If we, okay, going forward with the draft as it exists, the first time we would probably see it from a potential approval standpoint, the absolute earliest would be the 12th of January, followed by at least another 2 weeks before we would have a second reading. So we're looking end of January at the very earliest that this would be implemented. As far as tickets, until we would establish a relationship with the town of Dillon, then we would still fall under the county code for any tickets that the sheriff would initiate, and it would not go through our system. It would go through the county system, through the county court. Am I right, Mr. Town Manager?
You're correct, except for the fact that there would also be an additional 30 days after the ordinance.
All right. So we're talking right now, if this is give a nod, we're talking about March from an implementation standpoint. And from a code enforcement standpoint, and that's something we'll have to talk about perhaps later, is the chief indicated that he was looking at code enforcement in year 2. We need code enforcement in year 1.
Yeah, he's looking at a second code enforcement officer to be hired over the course of the first year, but there is code enforcement that would have to be.
So we would have code enforcement if we have an agreement.
So there were the penalties of speed violations. Is that the one that Dylan has there? That's in our package?
Yes, yeah, that's something that I pulled up, up of the state website. It's, I mean, this is, well, I was gonna say it's extremely low, but 20 to 24 at 200 is not that low, but yes, so, yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, no, right.
So when you just briefly almost addressed the disparity between the state regulation and potential municipal regulations, based on your knowledge of other municipalities who set their own, how disparate does this look? What type of control are we giving up if we default to the state template?
Well, I mean, you're getting at all of your control, except for you're acknowledging that you're okay with going with the state fine schedule. I mean, you can set your fines at whatever you want. It has to be under really the 2650 that your fines are set at.
But do you see that? I mean, is that common practice to have a huge disparity in what the state subscribes to versus certain municipalities? I guess is my question.
I don't know that it's a huge disparity. I think, you know, one thing that's interesting is the difference between, for example, 5 to 9 for speeding and 20 to 24. It's $70 for 5 to 9 speeding over and $200 for 20 to 24. I mean, that's a big jump. Other municipalities might have a smaller jump. So their fines start out higher. So it's their system also is different in terms of every violation has a specified fine. Whereas as I was referring, municipalities who put in their own fine schedule usually do it by point and not by specific offense. So they say a 3-point offense is $100 fine. Yeah. And this isn't something that is set in stone. Just because you decide, if you decide to go with this state system, that doesn't mean you couldn't change it. You know, it would be a good question to ask the chief, Chief Osborne, as to his opinion. I think he would probably recommend that you stay with the state system. It's gonna be a lot easier for their officers. But again, later in time, you could do your own unique fine schedule.
Other questions? John?
So it seems like we've talked a lot about the possibility and very likely situation of joining the Silverthorne and Dillon process that's already established. What does the alternative look like if we end up meeting with that person or the people who are like, I don't know if we want this person as their judge, but what does that look like really beyond the process, but financially, is there considerations for that? Is that our only option or is there another option?
Town manager?
Yeah, it would be very difficult to have a joint police department and not have a joint court. It would be a pretty excessive burden. The judge in Silverthorne right now, Ron Carlson, is a top-notch municipal judge. He's a retired practicing law, but now he's a practicing municipal judge at most of the communities around here. We could theoretically set up our own court, hire our own judge, but, and eventually we might spin off from Silverthorne and form a Dillon Keystone court. But it's really highly impractical to have two separate courts with one police department.
I would say too that the judge and the prosecutor piece, those would be the easy pieces to separate out. All the are the citations where you need additional employees for court staff. It would be very difficult.
Other questions? Yeah, Cheryl?
My comments are relatively pedestrian compared to everything we've discussed, which is quite important. Under section 3, authority, it says that an additional administrative citation can't be issued for 10 days, which sort of suggests to me a 10-day remedy period. And yet in the next section, the notice and demand specifies that the violation has to be corrected or abated within 7 days of the notice. Why aren't we looking at the same period?
Well, those are two different things. So the notice and demand is really, here's what's wrong
Right,
with your property and you need to fix it.
right.
And if you don't fix it, then we're going to take additional action. And then the administrative citation is issued.
So this is chronologically backwards then.
Well, the authority is just
Okay, I understand.
high level.
Okay, let me move the second part. 5 days to appeal. I can't help but think up here in the mountain town, if by mail is one of our options, I think it's an undue requirement. I wouldn't assume anything is going to get from here to Silverthorne in 5 days. Can we readdress that just to consider the local mountain issue? I don't think we lose anything by being more thoughtful about the challenges we have with mail. Perhaps 7 working days.
Yeah, that can definitely be changed.
Small thing, but make a difference to working people who can't actually make the drive to Silverthorne.
Let me just look for a thumbs up. Everyone, what are your thoughts on that?
Has it impacted your time?
Do you see any impact with it, Mr. Town Manager?
No, I don't. Although I do agree with Council Burker, 5 days in mail, it's often taking me longer than that to send a mail to my neighbor.
Yeah, that's true.
What would you suggest?
Well, my going in was 7 working days.
Okay.
I think that's enough. Let's try that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? Then is it okay for the attorney and the town manager to go forward and present this change in first reading in January?
Yes.
Here we go. All right. Next item on the agenda is discussion of financials and Mr. Town Manager.
Okay. We're still kind of, this is becoming a broken record, but our revenues, above budget and our expenses are below. Actually, as of today, we're sitting very close to $2 million in the bank, cash assets. I'll go through a few things. So we'll skip down to our second page and talk about sales tax and other tax revenue. Other tax revenue, the highway users tax fund, we haven't received any money from that for two reasons. The first reason is all money for 2024 is being sent to the county because highway users tax fund is dependent upon the roads you have in January 1st of the year. Just today, the Department of Revenue and who oversees this fund finally got the software, got our roads designated as Keystone roads. So we'll be ready to go January 1st. And now we have a complete detailed inventory of what percentage of the county's highway user tax funds in 2024 should have come to Keystone. So I'll be approaching the county to get our fair share of the 2024 money. But the state just got that fixed today, just got that set up today.
And that's for the roads that the county was maintaining in Keystone.
Correct.
So we submit the paperwork, and I think it's in January for the 2025. It would include the additional roads we're picking up.
Actually, yes, it's based on, it's not just roads that are maintained, it's the entirety of public roads in Keystone. The inventory of that sets the highway users tax fund.
Including privately maintained roads?
As long as they're public roads.
All right.
And I'll be fighting with the county over a specific ownership tax, finding out why we haven't gotten that money too. It's morally, yes.
You're talking for 2024.
2024, yes. Legally, most likely, it depends on the IGAs we had with the taxes, but I don't anticipate excessive pushback from the county. They, from my initial discussions, they understand they owe this to us. Especially the specific ownership tax and auto ownership taxes. Highway users tax fund might be a different argument. Going back down, our this financial report is based on October 31st is the date it was presented. Our fees for short-term rental licenses are pretty much right at our budgeted numbers. Are they slightly ahead? So we've gotten all that money. It just doesn't show up in this report yet. As we scroll through, as you'll see, most of our items have a favorable variance to the budgeted amounts. And I'll say it again, except our attorneys, but obviously that was money well spent. Smoking cessation, we haven't gotten the money yet because all the towns haven't signed off on the IGA, but the income is offset by the expense we would owe too. So that's kind of a net zero that should all be completed this month or next month at the very latest.
Do you anticipate that that money will be, what's the word, retroactive as well, like the highway users, or will we no doubt start the day everybody.
I think we'll start the day we sign the IGA.
Sorry if I missed it. Why is the nicotine tax zero versus, what we had anticipated?
We haven't signed on to the IGA.
And that's-
Or not we,
Taxation.
oh, the IGA has not been completely.
Gotcha. Thank you.
That there's no pushback against it, it's just hasn't happened yet. I can't set the agendas enough.
But also, we haven't had the expenses of that we would have picked up had the IG been approved.
Correct. Absolutely. Road maintenance, we do have a variance there because we didn't have any money budgeted, but we have made a few repairs on Keystone roads this year, so that's why we see a negative variance there. Same with our public safety expense. No money was budgeted, but we did contract with the sheriff's department, so that's what those numbers represent. I'm scrolling through trying to see if there's anything that, and if any of you have any questions, please jump out. Housing authority fees are not going to be 120,000, and that money has been started. They have started to take money out of that, and as you've seen in our budget, we're estimated our cost to fund the housing authority will be $59,000 annually, at least for next year, which is taken directly out of the taxes that the housing authority remits to us.
What's the status of the county providing us the housing tax dollars for February?
That'll be an argument as we sit down to discuss the HEPF funds and the specific ownership funds. The county manager understands they're obligated for the February money.
The 56,000 that we anticipate for SCHA, is that for something more than staff? Because it's 56 from this town
Yeah,
and then many others. It's a pretty good chunk of money.
it's staff and equipment, IT, computers, things like that. They will do a lot for us, though.
And the way that's allocated is based on your tax receipts.
It's just paid for programs above and beyond.
Well, there's some, I believe they have like some home buyers programs, issues like that. Any other questions on finance?
One thing I'd be interested in future months is a tracking of the actual sales tax receipts when they come in, having that be reported to the council versus what we had budgeted for those in a particular month. It'd be the same thing for the lodging tax next year. So we could just, it's very hard to follow in an referral system what the real numbers are as we're going. So just when we get those words in the first part of the month, you could just report that to the council.
And certainly, and I can tell you right now, we just got today our deposit from December, so that would have been our October sales tax numbers. They were down $4,000 over our projected numbers, but we're still up approximately $90,000. When we bring on our finance director, you'll see some real nice reports with lots of charts and things like that.
All right. Any other questions on the financials? 3-minute break? Sure. We're at recess for 5 minutes.
Okay, and I'd like to re-stress to the council, the last two items, our agenda, the nuisance ordinance and the business licensing. If necessary, those could definitely be pushed off to our January meeting.
So we will reconvene in,
Okay, we will be approving the budget later tonight, or we will be having an additional meeting at some point. Since the last workshop, I've finished the budget message, added, and I emailed you all, the mayor identified a couple mistakes I've made. So I've corrected those mistakes. Not really material mistakes. I've made 2 material changes to the budget since we workshopped. One is we had the capital and non-routine projects as a restricted fund. To tell the truth, it wasn't a restricted fund. It was funded out of the general fund. There were no ballot regulations or state regulations insisting it be a restricted fund. All funds are restricted by where you put the money. So I've moved that up to a sub-fund under the general fund, and it just eliminates fund transfers, issues like that, and makes our restricted funds truly restricted funds. And following the business roundtable we had the other day, I've put a $100,000 economic development line in the general fund. Now, this we can easily take out. I just wanted to put it in there, and I put it in there as a placeholder. It's for economic development, marketing, and branding. I have no plans on spending any of that money at this point. And before any money would be spent out of this fund, there would be a council discussion on what should we do. This was simply a thought I had after the business roundtable, where they made it clear, and I agree with our businesses, that a big part of our town's role should be supporting our local businesses in whatever ways make sense. I guess I just want your feedback on that line item.
what are your thoughts?
Well, Dan, I also attended the meeting, and it became clear that there's an awful lot of people trying to brand our city today. And I think this will be part of us trying to bring back together what we envision in marketing and sales, what our town is. And so I encourage you to keep this money in.
Other thoughts? Richard?
I would agree that it's important to have this placeholder. And this also gives us an opportunity if something comes out of the comprehensive plan that needs attention quickly. So I think it's very important.
I agree. I like the flexibility it gives us.
While I am sympathetic to the idea of this line item, it's larger than the trails budget. There's only 80,000 for trails. Trail maintenance is 10,000. There's trail paving at 80,000. Or trail repaving at 80,000. I don't see where we're spending 6 figures potentially on business development and branding, and less than that on our trails open space. So I'd like to see some balanced consideration there. Up the trails budget, maybe swap those numbers around.
Other thoughts, Carol?
I was encouraged to see that you add that. You're clearly listening. I do believe we are going to require some monies down the road, and I don't disagree with what Councilman Parbat has said. Maybe we carve 10,000 off of that. But here's the other thing. What we heard from our business representatives were valid interest in some kind of over umbrella kind of marketing. And we could anticipate that we would ask some of the businesses some or all of the businesses to help us fund that. So you've given us, I like the way I think you said the placeholder. I like that. That thought doesn't commit us, but it makes us start thinking about possibilities. Thank you.
Other thoughts? John?
So back to Aaron's point about the open space, are those numbers that are in there what we actually anticipate spending versus this placeholder for the business development aspect? Is there the potential to move some of those around? Are those also just placeholders that we're unsure of the actual cost on?
We are unsure of the actual cost on those, but I agree with Councilmember Parmet that our trail and our trail access is one of the highlights of the town of Keystone. And what we do with trails, especially expanding trailheads, a lot of that will be driven by the comprehensive plan, I think. And
It'll also be driven by the Trails and Open Space Master Plan for next year.
correct. So, we have the money to put more money into that in this budget if the council would desire that. We don't have plans necessarily at this point to spend the money. I figured beyond the expansion of trailheads and trail access and new trails, one thing we can definitely do without planning is fixing our primary Snake River Trail. That's why there's a relatively high number in that budget, but I have no problem putting significantly more for trail construction.
Because right now, it's at the town, the trail we're responsible for maintaining is the regional trail that goes to the town.
Correct.
And then we're talking about potential expansion beyond that. And the question, and I have no problem raising the dollars we'll spend this year, the way the budget's laid out. If there is additional dollars that are being spent, the town manager will identify that, and that will even take a resolution to make that happen. But the trail, I think the Trails and Open Space Master Plan is going to be really the driver. That it helps identify what new trails we're going to need and the dollars we're going to need to put into it, not only this year, but really in the future. Jared?
I'd just like to call attention to some additional trails that folks may not be aware of that actually are going to be under our purview, already are under our purview. And that is we basically have inherited some open space, including some that's directly behind the West Hills neighborhood. So section of the Furlough Trail and there's various names for it, but there's kind of an aqueduct trail that runs right behind there. And there's currently only 10,000 in the budget for any maintenance on those trails. And I'll point out the sections above our control were redone this last summer. And stopped work when they shot there maybe needs for drainage work there. And then there's other trails that we may not be thinking about that run along, say, the river. I think we have some open space areas in East Keystone as well.
Yeah. The problem is right now, we do not own any open space in the town.
We do own that.
No.
Yes. I did this, and we talked about it.
Which trail?
So the bottom of Furlough,
Which is Furlough.
so it's directly behind West Hills.
That land is owned by the county.
No, we discussed this previously. So to clarify this issue, that land was bought for the public by the county. It passed the town when we incorporated and was within our boundaries. That's what the open space committee said.
Let me ask the question. As I understand it, it's still listed on county records as owned by the county. And that's something that the whole issue of ownership of the open space is something that we need to take on with the county. Can the town attorney talk a little bit about that?
I would need to look at it specifically. I can't. I honestly don't recall the specific issue
for this area, but yeah, I'd have to look at it further.
Yeah, we have a major issue with all of the open space in Keystone. And as far as I know, regardless of what the open space committee said, legally, whether we own that land or not is a very real issue. For instance, the county spent money on that land on there to do some trail work this last summer. But this is an issue we as a town have to get our grips on, because I believe we need to own all of that open space.
I agree with you.
Gretchen?
I think what Aaron is saying is that he would like to see us prioritize trails higher at this point, at a high.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just, how about we throw out a number? This is a budget discussion. And how about we put in a number that would make you comfortable, and make the statement you want to have made. I don't think we can, specifically determine exactly where we're going to spend what at this point. But I think in order to go forward, I'm very comfortable with a higher number, and I'd just like to hear what you think it should be. Because we need to approve this tonight.
Well, I mean, with anticipating what's going to likely come to us, hopefully come to us, some of the goals we want to do, I would say that that trail maintenance development number should be significantly higher than 10,000, which is, I don't know, that's probably not to work on a quarter mile.
Well, but you have two lines. You have an 80,000 line and a $10,000.
Right.
And it's just a matter of where you pay for the dollars you pay for. So
Certainly.
really 90,000 interest.
Certainly anticipating the 80,000 is probably going to the work on the multi-use paved trail. I'd love to see the other trail maintenance line increase to 50,000.
Any objections to that?
No.
Everyone okay with that?
So when
Good.
we pass the budget and funds later, the motion should include with the adjustment to the budget and all associated lines, recognizing trail maintenance increases to $50,000.
I'll make that then.
And just so we're all speaking the same language, on line 168 is what we're talking about, that $10,000 jump, that's to 50.
That's general.
Yep. All right. Any other budget questions? Where do we have a,
I don't have a question, I have a statement, and that is, it was very clear read. I could find everything I was looking for. And I appreciated having the note, and I'm very comfortable with the job you did. Thank you.
Sarah?
You've heard me say this before, it hasn't changed. You have shared with us that the budget is going to give us a surplus next year, anticipating $1 million surplus. And I see that we have split policing expenses between the general fund and the 2% lodging tax. Now, under the 2% lodging tax, the current budget, proposed budget, is listing $200K for routine policing, plus $250, I think, for capital investment in police cars or equipment, and then another 15 for miscellaneous investments. Those additions seem very reasonable. So I'm only talking about the $200K, which would go for our ongoing routine policing. I bring this up because when the argument was made to voters to create our own town, the argument was that if we controlled the county tax, sales tax money, we could provide better policing. And I think that is absolutely viable. to expect this better level of policing within the money in our general fund revenues without touching any of that capital improvement money. Yes, this does represent an increased public safety, but there are so many things that we're going to be looking at for capital expenses. It very much concerns me that we would start out by putting a routine expense against those funds. And I just want to ask my fellow council members, are you comfortable in doing that?
John,
Yes. I'm comfortable with where the budget is laid out right now, and I think that specifically calling out police services at $200,000 is honestly exactly what we would want to do with the 2% lodging tax, showing that there's a direct tie between public safety investment, whether routine or capital, and the 2% lodging tax.
I would argue that,
wait a minute, is there anyone else with a comment? Right, Carol?
yeah, I would argue that the police on the ground and what people see is going to be what is persuasive as opposed to where we move a line item one way or the other. Any other thoughts on this? It doesn't seem to. I feel like it's a bit of a bait and switch, and yet everybody seems comfortable with that. Am I misreading this?
Yeah, I understand. I see that as, the safety is a big bucket, trying to put different buckets. I guess I don't have a problem with the way it's displayed in the budget today. I don't think it violates what we had committed to the community with the sales tax.
Let me make a comment now. One, I agree with Carol. Overall, and in the long term, I would like to see all funding for the operations of the police department versus the capital expense of the police department paid for out of the general fund. The argument was made at the previous review of the budget that there are some people, members of the community, who believe that when we had public safety in the ballot language, that would be for additional police officers and paid for that. So I could go either way for this year, but in future years, I certainly want to see all of the operations costs in one budget line, because right now, it's very difficult to figure out how much the police department is really costing us in operation. If it's all in one line, then it's very clear. Sure. So with that, Eric?
Yes. Any other comments? John? And I think your point about the total cost of public safety is very valid. We might need us, our future finance director, to aggregate that total for us so we can have some more crystal clear results on what that actual total cost is.
Well, it's only a 2 budget line.
But for ease and appeasing folks, maybe that might be a 5-minute task to see the totals that we all can have it.
If I may. We definitely have the money in the general fund to put all police services in there. I split it that way exactly like the mayor said, because when I saw public safety in the ballot language, I assumed it meant police. And I put it that way as a political exercise. You guys are the politicians. You make that determination, not me. I just put something out there for you to mess with. All our reserve funds are pretty much going to go to capital projects from both funds as it works out. So the impact is kind of minimal on where future funds are spent. If you feel we should move it all to the general fund, that's something we can do. It's up to you as a council.
Just let's just address that issue first. Any other thoughts on that before I ask for a thumbs up, thumbs down for this year? Carol?
Very simply, I would say it's a matter of clear communication to our constituents where we're putting the money, where they don't have to go looking at different places in the budget. And I rest my case.
Right. So any other comments on it tonight? Let's have a thumbs up for those who would like to keep the dollars for 2025 as they are projected currently in the budget. So who would like to do that? Just for police. Keep it in the budget as it is. All right, keep it in the budget as it is.
And next year I'll present it the other way.
Recognition of Carol's comment.
Yeah, okay. I think you're absolutely correct, Carol. I would like to see next year where the office start doing is important to keep it all in one line for operations. Go ahead.
Well, where, as I said, any other changes, comments on the budget before the evening meeting? So the one change we do have is increasing the trail maintenance line to $50,000 in the general fund, and the associated changes in the resolutions that'll be.
Resolution, and you will have to change the language in the message.
Yep.
All right.
Real quick one. So there's a resolution about a mill levy of 0, which will make no impact. So I was wondering what the rationale is for that. Is that a legal requirement, or is it anticipating a future event?
It's a legal requirement. It's we believe.
Yeah, it's, so if you were to have a mill levy, you do have to do that. Don't have a mill levy. So we're doing it this year. I don't know if we need to continue doing it, but. Okay.
We do have to still submit a DLG 70 form.
Okay, so that would be, would you submit the resolutions with that form?
Yes.
Okay.
It's how the county determines what property tax to withhold or to assess on our property holders, and that's 0.
Yes.
But we still have to give them that form so that they have proof that we're not asking for.
Thank you.
Point of order.
Yes.
Last, about having a comment period for public during the work session. And I don't know if we have that on our agenda.
It's on the agenda for the council meeting, the bylaws.
Okay, so not this work session.
We can't approve it. It has to be approved. And it's approved
In the bylaws, then the next one.
in the next one.
Okay.
And point of order again, we do have an obligation to allow public to comment on the budget up until the time of adoption.
Right. And they'll have an opportunity to do that in a public comment period. Or do we have to do it when we have the resolution?
My understanding is that they have a legal right to do it up until adoption. So I'm not really sure how that would work.
For this particular item, the budget, I don't think it would hurt to allow public comment on the resolution. Not the budget.
All right. Any other questions on the budget?
Not a question, but thank you. I know that there's been a lot of work, and this is something you're going to be happy to get a financial director to do in the future. So good work. Thank you.
It's been suggested that we take a very brief recess to pick up food, then come back and hear the SE group presentation. I'd like to get them out of here. He's been very patient for the last hour and 50 minutes. So, without, is there any objection to taking can we do it in 10 minutes, a 10-minute recess to pick up food, come back with the food, have the SE group presentation, and then we can take stock of where we are, and with that presentation, determine if we want to do business licensing and the nuisance ordinance. All right.
Before we jump into it tonight, as you recall, we initiated this process with an RFP at the end of July. We received back 7 proposals of the staff. Andrew and I reviewed those. We came up with the top 3, and I believe it was I think 17 population reviewed or interviewed, if you will, the top 3. And for the reasons in the staff report, we selected us. With that being said, we thought it would be a good idea to introduce the team, if you will, of SE, and they'd like to make about a 20-minute presentation and maybe 10 minutes worth of questions from council. So with that being said, Dylan?
Yeah, all right. Thanks for having me, everyone. It's really nice to be here. Let's see. So I'll just go ahead and get right in. I have 2 colleagues online. I'll introduce themselves as well. Brian, who's first?
So I unmute myself. Hi, I'm Brian Duffney. I'm a principal with Economic and Planning Systems. I was hoping to be up there today in person, but I woke up with a pretty nasty head cold. But good to see you all.
All right, and Danielle.
Hi everyone, my name is Danielle Federici. I'm with Fair and Peers. We're a transportation consulting firm based in Denver and Boulder, and we'll be working on the transportation portion of this project.
Great, thank you. So Easter will jump in periodically throughout the presentation to talk about their specific sections. So I'm SE Group. My name's Dylan. I'll be quick. Oh, sorry. Okay, good. Sure. Okay. So I'll be the project manager from SE Group on the comprehensive plan, and then we partner with systems that we some of the economic development piece, as well as the housing needs. And then Fair and Peers, I understand there's a lot of transportation related issues you all are looking to address, so we've got a great team to present. Some of the reasons we're excited to work with you. SE Group has had a long presence in Summit County. We've had an office here for a long time. Our CEO is based in Breckenridge for decades. I myself started my career as a ski instructor 20 years ago now, and I'm excited to be back here working with the great governance plan with you all. It's a really cool full circle for me. So a little bit about us, SE Group, we are mountain town experts. We pretty much exclusively work with small communities, mountain communities. We've worked all throughout the Intermountain West. We do a lot of Colorado. We also have an office in Salt Lake and Burlington, Vermont. So we work a lot with communities adjacent to the areas. It's kind of our bailiwick, working just like yours. We consider a very balanced planning approach. We like to be considering this as a partnership, so we want to work with you all to realize your vision. We don't like our plans to just sit on the shelf. We want them to be implementable. We want to give you actions you can take away and carry forward. And then the team that we've assembled, we think is going to be a very successful team. We've worked on a lot of comprehensive plans together. This partnership with SE Group, EPS, and Fair and Peers, we're currently working on Steamboat's comprehensive plan right now. And as you may have read in recent articles, they've got a lot of sort of issues that they're trying to deal with right now as well. So we think that we're well suited to work with you all as well. So again, this is kind of how it's going to break down. We'll be leading most of the project management. I'll be sort of your major point of contact along with Gabby Moeller, who couldn't be here today. And then EPS, as I said, housing needs assessment, economic analysis, Fair and Peers, transportation. So just some basics of the names of other folks that aren't here tonight, but you'll be interacting with throughout the process. So Gabby and Aiden and Caleb from my team, and then also Scott. So SE Group at one point in time was called Snow Engineering. So our firm started off doing ski resort planning. And so we still have that faction within our company. And so we've worked with a lot of ski resorts, laying out where their trails are going to go, putting in new lifts, things of that nature, based area design. So we've recently worked with Keystone Resort as well, and Scott sort of led a lot of the projects, including the Suburban Bowl expansion. So we think that having Scott on the team as well will be critical for some of the resort just really quickly, some recent projects that we've gotten to work on. We worked on the Westville Master Plan, and Brian, I might actually have you talk about this one, if you don't mind.
Yeah, this was a really fun and challenging project that we did like deep in the pandemic for the town of Vale. It's, you know, when you think of Vale, you think of the kind of Bavarian compact village, right? But this is West Vale. So it's, you know, very low density surface parking, probably like some of the most, you know, the way we think about this as real estate people, it's probably some of the most underutilized property in the town of Vale. And we came up with kind of a market driven plan that if, you know, that lays out how developers or a master developer could really transform that area. And a lot of key issues were we're trying to balance retaining the local serving community space, local serving businesses, you know, hardware store, laundromats, the 2 grocery stores, and affordable housing. And I think it won an award, APA Colorado Award a couple of years ago. But yeah, that's a really successful collaboration with SE Group, EPS, and Fair and Peers, the same team that is in front of you today.
Another recent project, we worked with the town of Frisco doing their complete streets plan, as well as their 3-mile coordination with Summit County for looking at further growth and development in Frisco as well. And then, as I mentioned earlier, this team is working on Steamboat Springs' comprehensive plan. So kind of all the elements packaged in. The last time that they updated their comprehensive plan was in 2004. So a lot's changed for them as well. So it's, you know, a big process. And I think that this is going to be a good team to kind of come in off of the coattails of this work and jump into this project. As I mentioned, we've got the Scott on the team who's led some of the recent work with Keystone Resort. And so I think having that coordination, when we read through the RFP, we realized that it was going to be something that was going to be important for you all. It's just kind of maintaining that coordination with the resort and how you interface moving forward. So I think that's going to be something that we consider throughout this project. Brian, do you want to take this?
Yeah. Yep. So just a little bit more about me. So I'm a principal at EPS. I'm based in Denver. I've been doing this kind of work for about 20 years, all with EPS, right out of grad school. So I really kind of found something that clicked with me. I do a lot of work in mountain towns, recreation gateway communities, on housing strategies, policies, economic and community development. We have a little bit of a niche in that we've also worked in evaluating kind of real estate and economic impact issues in resort-based villages, ranging from Mammoth Lakes to Telluride Mountain Village to Copper, Steamboat Space area. So we really get kind of the balance of lodging and kind of visitor density and commercial space and how it all has to work together. I think that, you know, when we were interviewing, that's something that there were a lot of questions around that. We've worked in just about every mountain town in Colorado that has a ski area, but have a lot of affordable housing experience. In Summit County, we've been involved in the Lake Hill project with the county, helping them negotiate with the town of Frisco and the sanitation district. We've worked on short-term rental policy with Breckenridge, Frisco's comprehensive plan, and we also did the 2019 housing needs assessment for Summit combined. So excited to bring a lot of that context from around the state and around the country to Keystone.
Thank you, Brian and Danielle.
Like I mentioned, my name is Danielle. I'm from Fair and Piers. I'm a transportation planner and I'm a project manager on the Fair and Piers side. Fair and Piers, we've done a lot of work in Mountain Town specifically, but also many transportation elements and sections of comprehensive plans. Again, we're working on one together in Steamboat. We're also currently working on different projects in Summit County, including the Summit County Safety Plan, which will be really important. And because of this, we have a really deep understanding of regional transportation needs, as well as transportation needs and challenges that are unique to mountain town communities. And on the bottom here, you can see, all the other mountain town master plans that we have participated in and helped plan.
So we kind of put this together as just sort of a fun way of kind of visualizing, you all already been on a journey, right? You decided to go your own way and incorporate as a town. And that's really awesome. But, kind of what comes next, right? And I think it was interesting getting to sit here and listen to some of the conversations you're already having around, safety and how you want to structure your community. And I think the part of this comprehensive plan process is for us to be, a project partner for you to ask questions about who do you want to be, what sort of visioning you have, who can we hear from, what do you need to know, what do you want to be thinking about, then how do we codify that into a set of conditions, recommendations, policies that you all can use as a guide for yourself as you move forward, continue in your journey into the town. So let's see. This is kind of our scope of work, and I think it's going to be a little hard to see on the screen, so I'll just go ahead and put it all out there. But so project management is kind of throughout the process, and that's going to be us checking in with Lindsay and Andrew and periodically interacting with you all, just making sure that we're kind of moving along at the pace that you all expect us to. And then community engagement, we envision a robust amount of engagement for this process. This is new comprehensive plan. It's a great opportunity to hear from your constituents and hear from folks that, a variety of folks in your community and just understand what it is that they're prioritizing. Research and community analysis. So this is going to be just kind of taking a deep dive into all the existing conditions on the ground now and trying to understand what are some opportunities that you have and then what are some existing challenges that you have and then making sure that we're tailoring our recommendations to meet those. The housing needs assessment and action plan will be led by Brian and his team. And that'll be kind of a quick process, but it'll be dovetailed into this fairly nicely. And Brian's team has been working with the state on the guidance recently come out of the recent bill. So they're very well positioned to make sure that the housing needs assessment is a practical tool, but also is in compliance with state standards. And then finally will be the planning document and then 3 mile area planning support. So helping you all with your growth and development coordination with the county. So, like I said, just making sure that engagement is thorough and inclusive. I think it's going to be kind of interesting getting started in the winter, but I actually am pretty excited about it because it gives us an opportunity to see if we can hit some of the part-time residents, seasonal residents, the folks that might be a little bit harder to reach otherwise. They're still in your community and a part of your community. So in many ways, I think we're kind of well positioned that we're starting on the and then, beyond that, I think that we're also going to be trying to assemble some stakeholder groups, advisory groups, folks that are, key constituents in your community that are very active members of your community on the business side, nonprofit side, things of that nature, so that we're making sure that we're hearing from them that they're going to be active participants with you in implementing your plan. Let's see. So we just identified some initial high level opportunities and constraints at this phase. And so one of the things that we're sort of aware of is that a lot of what you've already inherited in terms of planning, you've gotten from Summit County, right? Like your existing zoning on the ground is sort of what you've inherited from when you were unincorporated Summit County. So one of the things that we'll be kind of working with you all on throughout this process is, is that working for you? What do you want to see changed? And how do you want to update your regulations to better fit your vision for your community and your vision for growth, development, land use? And so some existing, that's an existing constraint for sure, but I think that one of the interesting things also is that your community is fairly well built out already, so not a whole lot of opportunities for new real expansion and growth, right? There's topographic constraints, highway, things of that nature. So there's going to be some interesting opportunities for infill development. So trying to work with Brian and his team, trying to highlight some of those opportunities as well. Brian, I'll turn to you.
Yeah, so like we're economists and planners. So I have the worst 30-second elevator pitch, I'll just tell you. But the way we think about projects like this is trying to integrate how do land use and the economy support each other. And we were thinking about just how I think some of the things that this plan is going to need to try to address is how to better connect things, how to create more of a place in Keystone. Connecting the different housing areas with the commercial development nodes. And on the next slide, you'll see that we talk about kind of tying together the experience for residents, people that work in the community, and guests. They all kind of need the same things, the same, I think the same sense of community, sense of belonging, quality of life aspects. And so that it's a really, I think, integrative approach that we're all taking on this. And then the housing needs assessment, sorry. So this is a statutory requirement that you asked to include in the comprehensive plan. And it will be used, it will also be used to inform, I think, some of the land use policies and strategies that come out of the plan, like what do you want to do with housing? What is your role in it? Which, especially thinking about the town as part of, potentially part of a multi-jurisdictional housing authority, what might be your role with Summit combined? I don't know if you've joined them yet or if you would plan to as a new municipality. I think that's something we would think about. But the housing needs assessment really tries to help you understand what your housing needs are. So we're looking at your demographics, your housing markets, and figuring out where there's the mismatch, right? Where between what you need to sustain your community and your major employers and what you have in terms of housing stock. It's a pretty exciting time to do it as a new municipality. I'm a nerd about this stuff. I was listening to your budget discussions, and you're talking about the different revenue sources that you're trying to figure out and how to sort of set up your budget. Housing is probably something that we'll need to be talking about in that context. But so we'll satisfy the state requirements. One of the people on our team is actually working with Department of Local Affairs on that. I think there's a draft out for review throughout the state. So we'll make sure that we are meeting those requirements, but also we want to make it something useful for you. So it's not just check the box, that it informs the plan, it informs how you manage the town in its future.
Thanks. Yeah, so, following on top of that, there are a lot of opportunities in transportation. For the Keystone Comprehensive Plan, we can really leverage changes in land use in tandem with transportation. So, talking about land use and transit-oriented development and making sure transit is aligned with high-density areas and vice versa. And there are also a lot of opportunities for Keystone visitors to interact with the transportation system. And, parking management is going to be really important, especially during peak seasons, and really encouraging travelers to park further out and take transit in. This is where we can actually leverage transit to get visitors and even residents to key destinations in the base area, as well as the ski resort. And then lastly, because we're working on the Summit County safety plan, we have done outreach in the area previously, and we can build off of those efforts as well. And even though the Summit County Safety Plan doesn't include Keystone, it will help people travel to and from Keystone safely. So that'll be really important. In terms of constraints or challenges, obviously, as was talked about earlier, one of the biggest kind of constraints or challenges is Highway 6. It's a connectivity barrier. There are a lot of safety concerns related to pedestrians crossing the highway. There's also a growing demand and an increase in vehicle traffic, part of which is coming from cut-through from Loveland Pass and folks traveling through Keystone. And in addition to regular vehicular traffic, there's also a lot of vehicles that are carrying hazardous materials and heavy vehicle traffic along the highway as well. Keystone, because it doesn't have a traditional street grid, it can make connectivity and walking, rolling to destinations more difficult, but that is something that we can work through and find solutions to as well. And then lastly, with Keystone being such a new town, there may be limited data available, but we can be creative, and there are many different ways to extrapolate data or use big data sources to complement existing data.
A lot of overlap with the discussion with police earlier that we heard today.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I just get scared of it. So we all got to sit in this conversation. So kind of wanted to review this slide, the next one was just kind of giving you a bit of a look ahead. So this might be a little hard to see here, but this is kind of the schedule of budget. So breaking it out on those phases that I was talking about earlier that we outlined the scope of work. So one of the things that we would start off with is a kickoff meeting, which we would hope to have either in December or January, get rolling fairly quickly. We built out our schedule to take 9 months, so that would put us through September. And then we have the community engagement happening throughout the project. The research and background analysis we expect to go through March. And then the housing needs assessment we expect to go through about May. And then the plan document would start to take shape after we've got all of our engagement, all of our research and existing conditions analysis, the housing needs assessment, the things that are feeding into the final document. We'll use a couple months to put together some drafts, interface with you, and make sure that it's meeting your standards and what you want to see out of the plan. And then from there, we can start working also on the 3 mile area of support. And so the total budget, and this, you all have probably already seen this, but it's just under 200,000, that 100,000 mark. And that's inclusive of the comprehensive plan, 3 mile support, and housing assessment, and including the transportation. So after we get kicked off, the next thing would be right away creating a project website and getting that out in front of your community and constituents so that they can see this is what's going on and they'll learn about upcoming engagement opportunities and how they can get involved in the project. Identifying an advisory group of key community stakeholders, so folks that you all think should be integral to the plan and serving as advisory capacity, and then scheduling some initial engagement opportunities. So with that, I will say thank you and take any of your questions.
Well, I just want to copy the page.
Sure, absolutely.
Valerie?
Thank you for being here. I'm very encouraged by the fact that I believe you guys were chosen unanimously by the Planning and Zoning Commission. I think that speaks volumes to the speaker right what I'm about to say. You did mention that we inherited our planning and zoning contentious. I'm wondering how you guys are going to ensure that you're not working from a perspective, given your background and experience. There was a reason that we decided to differentiate ourselves from other local towns. And my biggest concern is that we consider the unique needs rather than having philosophical political meetings from either the county or the state. How do you guys go about ensuring?
Yeah, so for us, our partnership is with you, with the town. So we want to make sure that the work that we're doing is in service of the town of Keystone. So obviously we want to make sure that we're coordinating with the county where appropriate and making sure that we're interfacing with their land use regulations and their growth and development plans and taking into consideration some various jurisdictions and ownership in terms of roadways and land and things of that nature. But our partnership with you, so we want to make sure that the land use regulations and the policy recommendations that we provide you are costs.
Other questions? Carol?
Of course. Well, I want to say that the housing needs assessment looks really good. And I was particularly excited about the self-identified nerd. Yes. But let me drill down on this question. This is a line from your proposal. cross-pollination of members of town staff, planning commission, and town council with the advisory committee is critical to ensure transparent communication. That is a lovely line. How does that actually take place?
I guess the short answer is that we'll be engaging with you all in different capacities in some ways. So we envision that the advisory committee will probably have some members of council on it. So the way that we structured our advisory committee for the Steamboat Comprehensive Plan is it has 3 members of their city council, 2 members of staff, and a member of Route County staff as well. And
Somebody can.
for Steamboat, it's Route County. But and so we would imagine wanting to propose to you some sort of similar structure in terms of the plan advisory committee. So it would include some representatives of different user groups, but then also we would be making sure that we're presenting at various checkpoints throughout the process to you, the town council, and then also to planning commission and to the advisory committee, so that they all have the opportunity to engage with us at different capacities and at different checkpoints in the process. So we'll be kind of bringing you together in some ways, but then also checking in with you all at different phases.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions? Gretchen?
I didn't hear the use of our planning commission in there. I would assume that might be a good resource. Can you address that?
Yeah. So we think that the interactions with the planning commission could happen in situations like this where we're presenting to them along the way and soliciting their feedback on some of the recommendations we have. I certainly envision we'll have one portion of the engagement was a priorities workshop. And so one thing that I would want to interact with the planning commission on very specifically is the land use regulations and future land use mapping component of the process, where we're trying to do a deep dive into what your land use regulations are, making sure that we understand what they need in order to be able to review development applications more successfully, or understand how the comprehensive plan could be in service to them in the work that they're doing. So we want to make sure that we know their perspective. So it'll be engaging with them in some capacities, and maybe it'll also be some sort of a smaller workshop or focus group meeting as well.
Let me ask a question to staff. It was my understanding as we were entered into this process that the comprehensive plan was being developed and would be flowed through the planning commission before it came to the council. So in essence, yes, the council is going to play, but your primary customer, so to speak, for development for the product that will come forward is actually through the planning commission. Am I correct, Lindsay, or incorrect?
You are correct. Basically, because it's a very large component of the master plan, land use, trails, transportation, the planning commission will be the lead. They'll be doing the lion's share. But with that being said, we're not going to allow anyone to go rogue, and we're going to do council check-ins like council just to make sure that we're not going too far in one direction.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. Val,
Yeah, I would like to kind of extend on what Valerie mentioned earlier. I appreciate your time being here today, but there was 2 kind of concerning aspects of the presentation. It sounds like there's sound bites taken from other presentations, and I really did that needs to involve me. And I think that other aspects or other stakeholders in our community are going to be very vocal about that. So being very educated and researched on a lot of aspects of our town are going to be very important. That will be very, very important for us to make sure that the stakeholders and our constituents are already especially on this first iteration of the comp plan. We're not starting from somewhere else. We want to start from ground zero and kind of work our way up. And then I did have a question for community engagement, right? Like ski resort towns that are unique with the transient and sometimes these aspect of the workers. How would you plan on engaging that? What I view as a very key aspect of our community.
You're right that it's not always easy to engage with those folks. I think one of the ways that we probably start off is, so we built into the scope doing a sort of plan notice or like a plan advisory campaign. So getting the word out. And so one of the ways in which we're going to do that is actually boots on the ground, going around and trying to, knock doors, put out flyers, get the word out. And so going to some of the employee housing locations and setting out flyers, going, setting up shop, working with you all to kind of get a better understanding of, where we think that we should be setting up shop to interact with folks that may be a little bit harder to reach, so that we can make sure that we're, reaching that group. Maybe that's, knocking on their door at employee housing, or maybe that's setting up a booth in Keystone Resort in the base area. Maybe it's, trying to do some targeted emails or phone calls, things of that nature. It's never easy to reach those hard to reach groups, and we've seen that in the communities we've worked with too. But sometimes if you do put that extra work in to try and go where they are, you end up getting a little bit of turnout.
In addition to that, staff has also reached out to the Vail Resorts housing people to actually maybe set up some times to lead presentations with them as well. Keep them in the loops. Specifically, 10 to 4 showed a lot of interest, and they have like certain nights where they actually have events. So maybe dovetail on those.
I would look at the participation numbers on there and see if that's really the best resource allocation.
Dovetailing off first what Valerie said, and then jumping back to the discussion that you just had with John, which was great. I'm very excited to have you guys here, and very excited that you've done so much work in the balance. At the same time, I'm glad to hear you say that you're really focused on what we want for Keystone, because obviously we want Keystone to be Keystone, but better. We don't want to be Vail, we don't want to be Breckenridge, and we don't want to be Bristol. We want to be Keystone. And I guess a question I have is when you're engaging folks in our community from different demographics and segments, we have a fairly interesting map with areas that are, you would think would be part of the town that actually aren't. And so when you're going to go to places like some of the employee housing, they're not in Keystone, but they're our neighbors, they're right on our doorstep. They may as well be, but I think it's worth differentiating those inputs. Particularly if you're going to set up a booth in the middle of River Run. So like figure out, is there a way that you guys will figure out how those inputs, so this person is a neighbor versus a resident versus a visitor?
I think that there's quick survey questions that we would put together. I think there's ways of trying to get at that data a little bit just by asking. But you're right. There are some ways in which that can slip through in some capacities. But as we kind of get our feet underneath us and we get project going, we'll have a better understanding of where we should be going. We'll be working with town staff, planning commission to know who we should be reaching out to more specifically, and then kind of tailoring our survey questions and our engagement questions to make sure that we're reaching the community versus the residents.
Awesome. Well, as a fellow self-identified nerd, we would, I think I can speak for the council, that we would expect to see that type of subgroup analysis and breakout in the data. And I guess the last thing, let's see, if you're going to fully engage this community, particularly the workers, ¿te hablan español? If you're going to go do presentations?
I don't, but we do have people on the team.
Qué bueno.
And I want to echo a little bit of what Valerie said, which is there is a reason we incorporated and left the county, and I want you to keep that very seriously in mind. One of the things, as we were writing the charter, as we were incorporating, as we were talking to people, we have about 1,000 residents, but we have many more second homeowners, and engaging the second homeowner in this process They didn't have a vote, but we talked to them about the importance of their voice. This is a perfect way to get their voice. And I want to make sure that, that is in your plan.
Absolutely.
Addressing that again, that I hope that any feedback you get is whether or not it's resident or non, so we can weigh that. Additionally, one of my biggest considerations that I hope is on your radar, you mentioned that we're very nearly built out. But because of the age of Keystone, one of our biggest considerations is going to be, so I hope that that is a huge considerable element in consideration and every aspect.
Absolutely.
And I know it's also been hit on a little bit previously, but, and by no means am I anticipating you know the map of Keystone perfectly, right? But there are certain areas that look almost gerrymandered, right, cut off, they look really super weird. Keeping in mind that our transportation nodes might service these areas, but might not be technically in the district of Key or in the town of Keystone is also taking that into consideration. I think it's technically the 3 mile plan or the buffer zone or something, I don't know the technical terms. But keeping in mind that there is areas that aren't technically in Keystone, but darn well near our almost.
I guess I would ask staff to help that you understand what is and isn't because of the nature of the incorporation process is going. And the fact that we're going to be anticipating that probably within a year or so, those will be, that you ensure that those inputs are received and properly paid, that they're going to be important to us.
Absolutely. We've already started some data analysis that would be remiss if we didn't anticipate those pieces not coming in. So it'll be part of the plan and part of the analysis with regards to those areas.
Comments?
Sure.
To show my ignorance, is the Trails and Open Space Plan that you spoke of earlier, Mayor, is that part of this? Is that one of the outcomes? That was okay. I would hope that the folks who sign up for the Trails and Open Space Committee that we're going to have are going to be good participants for you, but it doesn't exist yet. We'll be recruiting in January. When would that be? When would you need to be able to have them participate? When you get to that part? I mean, I could look at your chart, but I can't.
Yeah, let's see, I would say probably sometime February, March.
Okay, helpful, thank you.
Other comments or questions? Well, thank you very much for coming in tonight.
Absolutely.
Appreciate your presentation, and I'm personally excited to see how the comprehensive plan is going to lay out and how hopefully we can get our arms around the community and help guide where it needs to go in the next 10 to 20 years.
It's an exciting time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
Yes.
I do before I do. Thank you. Take some care, Kate.
I'm going to ask you a quick question. Can you do business licenses in about 5 minutes?
I think we'd be better off putting that discussion off until,
All right.
and I definitely can't do nuisance ordinance.
No, I wouldn't propose to do nuisance ordinance. All right, in that case, do I need a motion? I'll turn to the attorney for advice.
You can just adjourn the meeting.
Yes. Does anyone have any objection to adjourning the meeting at this point, and then we'll come back at 7 o'clock for the council meeting?
Are we skipping over the manager accounts issues?
We'll do manager council at the regular council meeting. Is that acceptable to everybody?
Yep.
Good, the meeting's adjourned.